So as Laurel mentioned, my goal here is really to kind of dive deep on some of our numbers. BIA Kelsey, first of all, use this one? Good. First of all, BIA Kelsey, for those of you unfamiliar, is a market research and consulting firm that focuses on all things local, since the 80s. So that used to mean Yellow Pages and radio and TV. And, within the last decade, of course, a lot of digital media. And then within the last few years, especially mobile, as mobile and local are clearly very much tied, as we're hearing about a lot at this conference. So anyway, we do a lot of forecasting on where we see mobile ad revenues going, particularly the location-based segment of those numbers. So my goal is to dive deep into some of those as really just kind of a proxy for what this market opportunity is. So I'm going to go through about 5 different trends in the 15 minutes or so that I have. So first of all, this is really just kind of the top line. I'm going to get into, this is not the location-based segment of the mobile ad spend in the U.S. that I want to spend a lot of time on. But first, just starting at the top line, we see in the U.S. mobile ad revenues growing from about 2011 last year. I'm sorry, 1.7 billion in 2011 last year, up to about 7.7 billion in 2016. Now, the best way to look at this is to really kind of break apart its components. And there's a few ways to do that. One is by format, and this really also gives a glimpse into how we're building these numbers by looking at the way that each of these different formats are consumed, bought, and sold. And really the story here is, we look at search, display, SMS, and video, the main kind of ways or the main formats of mobile advertising. But the big story here is how search, for the first time in 2011, overtook these other formats as the largest share and is growing clearly at the fastest rate up to the end of our forecast period. And there are a few different reasons for this. One of which is that we see the mobile web growing, where search is central, as opposed to native apps where search isn't relied on quite as much. We still see a place in the world for apps, and they're still going to be growing a great deal, but we see an accelerated growth rate for the mobile web as a development platform. And again, search is central there, so search query volume is going to benefit from that trend. And just briefly speaking, the reasons why we see search kind of starting to accelerate the growth over native apps is that from a development perspective, it's economically more attractive to build for the mobile web, where it's not only cheaper to build and update, but also you can reach more users and not be kind of straddled by some of the fragmentation challenges across different operating systems, across different app stores. And not only that, you're starting to see tools such as HTML5 be able to build app-like functionality on the mobile web. And then also, with respect to search-based advertising, we're seeing performance rates that are higher than some of these other formats, which is leading to premium ad rates, which is further shifting the dollar share shift towards search. So that's just kind of background about search. Another key segmentation here, again, of that overall mobile ad spend going from 1.7 billion up to about 7.7 billion by 2016, is the location-targeted portion of those ads versus those ad campaigns that aren't location targeted. And clearly the story here is how it's going from about a little under half of the ad spend in 2011 up to almost 2/3 by 2016. And before I go into the reasons why that is, or why we believe that is, we'll define this as ads that are targeted based on someone's location. So when we measure location aware and location-targeted advertising, the biggest kind of common factor is that it has a geo-targeted component behind it. So it could be display ads that are served based on geofences. It could be search-based ads that are served based on geographic modifiers in the search terms. It also could be ads that have geographically specific ad copy or geographically specific calls to action. So that's really the definition of what we consider in this kind of brown section of this share breakdown. So the reasons why we think it's going to be growing to basically take over the lion's share by 2016 is a few different reasons. The first of which is usage. Again, search is driving a lot of this. So if we look at local searches, we did something interesting in this last round of forecasting. Is I got together with some of my colleagues that measure the online space, and we have a very kind of similar methodology, so this is apples to apples, looking at local search query volume. So this isn't in dollars, this is just actual search queries, annual search queries, So we plotted the mobile versus the desktop equivalent and came up with something interesting, which is those two lines are going to intersect around 2015. And then mobile is going to actually surpass desktop in terms of local search query volume by 2016. And there's a few different reasons for that, one of which is one of our key forecast inputs is searches per user per month, or local searches per month per user, I should say, which are growing. Not only that, but the sheer number of searchers out there is also growing. ComScore now puts it at about 44% of the overall U.S. mobile subscriber base, which is around 118 million users. That's going to be growing to, we believe, to be about 75% of the U.S. mobile subscriber base is going to be engaged in mobile search by 2016, which is around 225 million people. So that's the first reason. I have basically three reasons why we see that location-targeted portion of the mobile ad spend take over the lion's share by 2016. First reason is usage, and I should add that 40% of Google mobile searches are local, which is further supportive of this. That compares with about 17% of searches that are local on the desktop. And about a year ago, the mobile searches being local were about 30%. So not only is it a pretty large share, but it's on an upswing and has some momentum behind it. So the second reason is advertiser evolution to kind of come around to that usage and really meet that demand halfway by starting to form campaigns that have those location-targeted components. That compares with what I consider phase one of mobile advertising, where a lot of advertisers were essentially taking their online campaigns, their online campaign objectives, even the creative, all these campaign elements, and simply porting them to a smaller screen. We're starting to see a shift towards advertisers that are building campaigns from the ground up that really utilize the unique aspects of the form factor and the way people are using it, first and foremost of which being that location-targeted ability. And Millennial Media, which actually went public last week, announced that they're seeing among the campaigns on their network that are geo-targeted, there's been a 53% year-over-year growth in those location-targeted campaigns. The third reason is premium ad rates. So not just the number of campaigns that are being launched that utilize location, but premium ad rates that will further kind of accelerate that dollar share shift towards local. Now, this is something I'll admit we haven't seen happen yet, but we believe it will. The reason why we haven't seen it yet is because there's still somewhat of a laggard adoption for location-targeted advertising in mobile, back to reason two. But we believe that will increase because the performance metrics we're seeing from location-targeted ads is pretty strong. And right now, their value is not commensurate with that higher performance. So we believe that it'll start to grow. And that brings me to trend two, which is, and I promise the other four trends I'm going to go over are significantly shorter than that first one, which kind of sets everything up. But trend two is just that mobile local ad performance. We're already seeing, we talk to a lot of mobile ad networks. This one, for example, is XAd, which does a lot of in-app advertising in mobile. And they're seeing click-through rates of about 5 to 8%, which is pretty strong. And that compares with non-location targeted ads. And what you see from that delta is about a 10x increase in ad performance when you start to add those geo-targeted components. But more important than just looking at kind of click-through rates or those kind of surface-level performance indicators is things such as, or what we're calling secondary action rates. And this gets to a lot of the intent that Laurel mentioned earlier and Renee mentioned in the last segment. User intent, as you go kind of further down the funnel, you start to see things like very favorable metrics for things such as placing phone calls or generating maps and directions, or a lot of these things that advertisers, particularly at the local level, are actions or desirable actions. So we're already seeing that happen. And again, I think those are going to be the drivers for a lot of those premium ad rates to start to develop around mobile. Around location-targeted mobile ads. But even more than that, my next trend is mobile shopping and payments, because this really kind of takes that same principle, but takes it a step further, getting closer to the point of conversion in a way that's trackable. We hear a lot about mobile payments these days and how it's going to kind of make more of a seamless experience for users. But I think the real angle and the more interesting story is the merchant or advertiser side of the equation, where what you're going to see is the ability to not only drive conversions with different promotions and things that let people kind of pay for things based on the media that they're consuming, but the ability to track that through to completion and use that information to then iterate upon whatever advertising or mobile presence that you have in place, and really use that just kind of feedback loop to do a lot of interesting things to refine campaign performance on an ongoing basis. That's really Google's main driver for getting into this. Google, as you probably know, is putting a lot of resources behind their Google Wallet product. Their end game really is being able to kind of close that loop and have reporting that indicates conversions resulting from search-based advertising. And again, that closed loop, I think, is going to be very powerful. A lot of formats, standards out there. We're seeing things such as Square, which is more about receiving payments with a mobile device than making them, but utilizing the mobile device and its portability. I mentioned Google Wallet. There's NFC. I personally think NFC won't get off the ground this year. There are a lot of implementation challenges. There's a classic kind of chicken and egg dynamic between the point-of-sale hardware and the compatibility at the device level. But I think really the winning formula here is going to be similar to what American Express has done with Facebook and Foursquare and others, where they're basically incentivizing different purchases with various promotions and then allowing you to tie your credit card to that product. And the next time you're in the store, the credit card swipe automatically knows it all happens in the background. There's no kind of redemption challenges. There's no printouts. So I think that would be something to look after when we're talking about this kind of getting closer to the point of sale and this kind of very important mobile local trend. 4, and I'll go quickly because I think I'm running out of time here. Mobile's path to monetization. We see a lot of leaders in the mobile local space, products that have really gained a lot of usage and engagement, such as Foursquare, Yelp, a lot of Yellow Pages companies, but they haven't really done a lot to directly monetize that at the kind of merchant or SMB level. We're going to see that change this year, and I think the forms that's going to really take is kind of a freemium model where a lot of advertisers are going to be given tools to have a presence, have campaigns, be able to drive foot traffic, but then really kind of enhanced ways to do that, such as deals, campaigns, landing pages, enhanced landing pages, pay-per-call campaigns, and other things like that. One supporting point of this, I always like to point to Yelp because they have about 8% of their 50 million uniques are coming through mobile. However, 40% of their search traffic is coming from mobile. So it's really a disproportionate share of engaged mobile users that really represent a huge opportunity when they flip that monetization switch. And then the wild card here is going to be Facebook mobile monetization. They announced at their marketing event last month that they're going to start to do this through sponsored stories that are now extended to mobile feeds. And I think that's going to be something to watch closely because not only is that going to be a great monetization event for Facebook because they have, they've indicated in their S1, half of their overall 845 million global user base are monthly active unique users on mobile. So really it's a massive market for them to go after. But not only that, I think that because of that sheer mass and sheer size and influence on the marketplace, what Facebook does, I think, is going to have a lot of influence on mobile ad units, how they're created, how they're targeted, and I think a big portion of that is going to be this very kind of location-aware, location-targeted conversation that we're having, throughout this conference. So that's going to be one to watch. And I think just further in support of not necessarily location-based mobile ad targeting, but overall mobile ad monetization or monetization through ad support, much of which will be local, can be seen by simply looking at a really interesting kind of share shift in when you look at the time spent per media. Mobile has 23% share when compared to radio, web, print, and TV. However, its share of ad dollars is only 1%, and that's compared with something like print, which has 6% share of usage. However, a disproportionately large share of ad dollars going towards it. So we believe, just based on kind of a general move towards kind of equilibrium in the marketplace, a lot of those mobile ad dollars are going to start to rise in a lot of the ways that we've been talking about. And then lastly, and I'll be quick with this one, this is just kind of taking a step back, not just mobile advertising, mobile ad targeting, but a lot of people put a lot of kind of time and effort and resources into making sure their strategy is right with mobile advertising and targeting, but then they drop the ball when it comes to their mobile presence. So when you have an ad that leads to an unoptimized page, or a page that, instead of having anything to do with the ad that you clicked on, it's just kind of the corporate homepage. That's just a big fail. And we're seeing it happen all over the place. There's about less than 4% of mobile websites are optimized for the device. And there are a lot of questions of, should I build a mobile app? Should I build a mobile website? usually the answer is both, but I mean, with limited resources, which of those should I do first? And there are, a lot of questions you should ask yourself. And a lot of these sound obvious, but it's really surprising how little this is actually practiced. Again, less than 4% of sites are optimized for the mobile web. And a lot of it comes down to different verticals you're in, the types of actions you want to drive. Do you want to drive foot traffic? Do you want to drive phone calls? Do you want to just go for a branding play? And especially for a lot of small businesses at the local level, there's a kind of interesting debate going on right now where, is it overkill to have an app if you're a small business? Now that that's, more possible when the cost of app development is coming down, it's starting to be, more doable for small businesses. But the question is, instead of just jumping at this in a knee-jerk reaction way or a way that just kind of builds on kind of the, narcissistic tendencies of some small businesses of, you just got to have the app. In a lot of cases, that's just overkill. And, you can't have an app on your device for, every single small business that you frequent. There's a lot of kind of app fatigue out there. So the question is, can you accomplish the same thing on a mobile site that really takes advantage of the searches people are doing at the local level to find things? So again, a lot of that's obvious, but a lot of people aren't doing it. So it's really a question of asking yourself what the goals are before you jump into this. And back to kind of the local angle here, what I would do is I'd recommend if you're kind of in that position or, whether you're an advertiser, whether you're a business, whether you are a company that is kind of in more of a publishing context and acting on behalf of other advertisers, a lot of these things are things that you should be looking at. This is actually straight from Google. I'd recommend you look at Google's GOMO effort is what it's called. And Google, with a vested interest in driving growth of the mobile web, again, because it's very correlated to the growth of search, is really trying to evangelize a lot of these best practices in mobile web development. And there are a lot here. I won't go through all of them, but I'll focus on one that is make it local, as that's really the theme of a lot of things we're talking about now. And again, that comes down to user intent. When you're building a mobile website, some of the kind of creative elements of a desktop site aren't really in context in mobile, where it needs to just be more of a utilitarian type of function, where you want to surface calls to action that really capture some of that user intent that's further down the funnel, that wants to do things like find out, when you're open or where you are. So things like, click to call buttons, maps, those are the types of things that need to be kind of surfaced. And in support of that, we talk to a lot of companies that really do this. Duda Mobile is a top provider of mobile websites for small businesses, and they report that through some of these efforts of really just kind of surfacing or making more prominent these local calls to action, they've seen click-to-call rates of 18.3% overall, and even in some categories it skews higher, like pizzas. So really that's just supportive of doing that. I mean, 18.3%, that's huge. That's enough to make a lot of advertisers drool when it comes to the amount of calls that can be generated from just, some simple practices in making sure you're optimized for local. So that's actually it for me. I want to reiterate just a few quick points. One is which, mobile usage is very much skewing local. Advertisers are starting to catch on to that. Until then, there's a lot of undervalued inventory out there because demand is still low, and I think it's time to experiment with that. And again, it's not commensurate with its value in terms of ad performance. So there's a lot you can do now to experiment and make sure that your mobile presence is well optimized with all those local calls to action that capture that intent. Here's my information in case you have any questions. I'm available throughout the rest of the conference. And within this deck, I added a few case studies, which I won't go over now, but in case you end up with this deck, things that you can digest on your own time. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening.